A Byzantine Humanist Eschatology of Creativity, April 27th, 2025. That's when it was approved. Abstract. Is there an eschatological future for human creativity? Might something about creativity, or its forms as we know them, continue? A world without music in its full variety, fictional narrative, art, philosophy, comedy, history as a field, engineering, or something essential behind them, seems unimaginable, if not undesirable. And yet, humanist creative pursuits attract suspicion from a supposedly Christian but certainly ascetic cast of mind. It's a defensive reaction for the sake of the tradition, which is good, but becomes an irrational changeophobia, or excess fear of innovation, as it's more usually called. Creativity appears to this mindset as a form of innovation, worldly activity, but the form of this world, they remind us, is passing away. One could ask in response, why would creativity, which human beings uniquely manifest, be discontinued in the kingdom of God? Is there legitimate criticism of human creativity as such in the ascetic tradition, or is this anti-humanist? Or is this anti-humanist allergic reaction to it merely a post-siege period holdover of Orthodox Christian subcultures and a corresponding misinterpretation and poor reception of that very same ascetic tradition? The method to discover the answer will be a comparison of two views, humanism and anti-humanism, with respect to how well their basic concepts stand up to scrutiny and how well they explain the relevant patristic textual data. This thesis explicates the discovery that creativity will likely continue, and in so doing, brings into higher resolution a humanist perspective already latent in Orthodox tradition. Now, as an aside, just for today, and today is almost a year later, I wouldn't call myself a humanist. Okay, these are kind of dangerous words out of context. I could say that I lean towards humanism, and it also strikes me as strange that I'm talking about likelihood, like it likely will continue. Of course, I'm speaking as a scholar, who's making an inference on textual data, as I call it. But again, personally, I just believe this, and maybe I'm making it more palatable to a skeptical reader by saying this. Okay, I think it would be worth it to read the table of contents. This is a 40-page writing, but there's a table of contents. So you get the introduction, an overview, an approach, and then there's 6 sections. The 6th is just the conclusion. The first is contrasting views. The second is what is creativity. The third is an argument, just the spelling out the argument and its premises and all of that. The fourth is a direct critique of anti-humanism and support of the humanist model. Number 5, and the last one before the conclusion, is defense of Byzantine humanist premises. Okay, I don't know if I should go into the sub parts. That might be best for like timestamps. Okay, introduction. The question of whether human creativity continues in the future age is important, but obscured by a popular pious sentiment in Orthodox subcultures which views creativity with suspicion, associating it with deviation from the tradition. This suspicion, based on a misreading of monastic literature, seems to be a continued symptom of the Orthodox Church's historical siege period, by which I'm referring to like the Turkish control, Turkish domination, Turkish yoke, and the communist takeover as well, and like I usually say, I think it's continued in neoliberalism, just modernity in general. Okay, well, the Turkish conquering of Byzantium goes maybe a little bit before 1453. That's a little bit before modernity, but okay. Okay, arts like music and literature, similar to the incarnation itself, are means of knowing the unknowable other. They are media or forms of human creation that cataphatically mediate interpersonal communion, that is, facilitate communion without ever overcoming an indefinable apophatic core to each person, the other to each person. The resurrection of the body and the renewal of the world both give signs that creativity and its media, in some mysterious form extricated from death, will continue as our embodied and enworlded journey are means for endlessly becoming like God. Next section, overview and approach. After further introducing our theme, defining terms, especially what is meant here by creativity, I will outline two whole views and show how humanist theocentrism explains the data better than anti-humanist theocentrism within the overall topic of human creativity in the eschaton, under a range of relevant subtopics, for example, the arts and the imagination, reason, science, and the world. The subtopics and their textual data's relevance to the overall topic will keep the focus on the one goal of comparing and judging between these two views and supporting humanism by way of supporting the central humanist thesis that creativity will continue. I will define terms that I take as shareable and non-controversial first, lay out the argument for humanism, and finally the underlying definitions and concepts at the core of humanism, which are suppressed or denied by the anti-humanist. After supporting these and critiquing the opponent's underlying concepts and interpretations in the section called Direct Critique, I will consider textual data that seems to be in tension, presenting anomalies for both views and resolving them according to their auxiliary hypotheses. Note 1, see Emir Lakatos, in the section titled Defense, or in subnote, in footnote, in the section titled Defense. Lastly, in this same section, I will provide key texts from the Orthodox Christian tradition, which simultaneously support the humanist auxiliary hypotheses and the most controversial humanist premises about the strong connections between body, world, and creativity. Among these supports, Saint Demetrius Staniloi will come clear as the most central author and window onto Orthodox humanism to be uncovered in the Byzantine Fathers, especially key statements from Saints Gregory Palamas and Maximus the Confessor. Footnote 2 on Saint Demetrius Staniloi. He was recently canonized by the Romanian Orthodox Church on February the 4th of the year of this writing, 2025. End footnote. Contrasting views. Subsection, use of eschatology as a lens. Eschatology will be used here strictly as a lens to find whether man's creativity is necessary for human beings to be human, and therefore of eternal value, as we will be eternal, or whether it is of temporary stage-limited value. Protology, paradise, Eden, also gives clues, but much early patristic literature argues that man was made incomplete initially, not fully mature, and so it doesn't offer as complete a picture when we glimpse this state as we get by seeing the final state. Christological anthropology is also a useful lens, but can also be ambiguous. Footnote 3 on the sentence, protology also gives clues, but much early patristic literature argues that man was made incomplete initially, not fully mature. See Peter Butinev, who was my advisor. Beginnings, Ancient Christian Readings of the Biblical Creation Narratives. pages 79, 83, 87, 144, 149. He discusses Irenaeus and Gregory Nazianzos as endorsing the view that Adam and Eve were not created already mature or automatically good, but rather a work in progress, and they partook of the tree of knowledge too early, but were going to when they were mature enough. Indeed, virtue presupposes experience and choice, a kind of process. End footnote. Subsection Popular Piety and the Ball of Light Theory. The position I'm arguing against may or may not be related to the beatific vision. I don't intend to delve into this Western theology and make no claim to understand it. Instead, I am constructing an opposition view out of the pious sentiments I have heard and continue to hear around me in Orthodox subcultures. They can give quotes of the Fathers, but they avoid formulating an argument for their interpretation. This is because to them, it wouldn't be pious to use their reason in matters of faith. It's unclear who believes it, but it's in the air in the public mind. On the topic of eschatology, I call the view that is vaguely popular the pious ball of light theory, according to which the eschaton, where it's not ineffable, consists of standing in bliss, noetically apprehending God as a ball of light, singing with a harp or possibly without one. Their theory seems to gain traction by a common misunderstanding of Orthodox apophaticism. Nothing else can be said but that which is pious, that is, that there is worship around this light, that is perpetual, endless worship done at the exclusion of any other activity. And it would seem this negation of what is in heaven brings us eschatological knowledge, and that this is analogous to the negations that bring us to apophatic knowledge of God, but this isn't true. So, note 4 on common misunderstanding of Orthodox apophaticism. Our key apophatic texts for eschatology are 1 Corinthians 2:9. Eye has not seen, ear has not heard, nor has it even dawned on us what God has prepared for those who love him. And 1 Corinthians 13:12, we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. End quote. Notice St. Paul doesn't specify positively that there is a soul activity. S-O-L-E, soul activity. End footnote. Okay, first, consider the following. God is beyond goodness, and we should not equate him with this manifestation or property he has, goodness. Yet it is not valid to infer by the true disjunction something is either good or not good, that because God is beyond goodness, he lacks or doesn't have goodness or isn't good. The cataphatic statement, God is goodness itself, is not contradicted by the apophatically true statement, God is beyond goodness. The transcendent does not violate the immanent, but contains and surpasses it. And furthermore, God lacks goodness is not an apophatic statement. The proper apophatic statement is that God is not goodness, where is taken to define, conceptualize, or equate God with goodness. Rather, goodness is one name among many, and a name only designates or points, it doesn't define. So, the eschaton lacks creativity is not an apophatic statement because it merely contradicts a cataphatic statement. It doesn't say there's more than that. It says there's less than you think. And God in his revelation would need to make this clear to us or to the fathers before us, as he has made clear that marriage as we know it will come to an end. And so this ball of light theory is not apophatic, although it is disguised as such. Nor is it pious. The fathers like Saints Hesychius or Theophan argue for the positive use of good thoughts, thought images, as long as this does not intrude in the context of prayer or with pretense to being prayer. Footnote 5, Hesychius the priest on watchfulness and holiness in the Philokalia, first volume, chapters 53, 87, and 104. Theophan the recluse, the path of salvation, pages 142 to 43. End footnote. But prayer is not supposed to replace all other activities. And that is why things have been so designed by God that prayer can happen simultaneously with other activities, since two different activities can happen via two different parts of the soul. Footnote 6, and to this, even the ultra-pious author of Way of a Pilgrim attests, anonymous, the way of a pilgrim, and the pilgrim continues his way. Page 206, he writes that the fathers of the Philokalia say that one prays the Jesus prayer at all times and in all places and during every occupation unceasingly, end quote. See also Nicodemus the Agurite in Handbook of Spiritual Counsel, Paulus Press, page 170. End footnote 6. The ball of light is arguably not a good thought. Ultimately, it appears to be an article of iconoclastic anti-humanism, and to hold up an image of a broken icon of human life as God's intention for eternal well-being. This iconoclastic type therefore falls prey too easily to Nietzsche's critique as showing symptoms of an unhealthy relationship to this life and this world, usually resulting from inaction or lack of engagement in personal development, while a saint like Gregory Palamas sidesteps this critique, showing it to be a straw man of Christianity, and could show us how to overcome both the world and the idolatrous clinging to the world. Footnote 7. Eastern Orthodoxy overcomes the critiques of atheism's biggest thinkers, Heidegger because of its apophaticism and Nietzsche because of its humanism. Again, I should qualify that it's like humanist theocentrism is what I mean, not the usual sense of humanism. I'm kind of revamping the word. I think Heidegger has been dealt with far more in Jan Arras, for example, but Heidegger was anti-humanist, and Nietzsche, an admirer of the Italian Renaissance humanists, has been too hastily dismissed. Note well that both were nominalists, or Heidegger at least seemed to be some sort of voluntarist, except the event is beyond a subject's will. Not coincidentally, and nominalism, voluntarism, fideism seems to have gained traction in some Orthodox subcultures, by Romanides as an exemplar. See Robin Phillips' article, How Nous Became a Trojan Horse for Secularism and Why It Is So Difficult to Translate, in Orthodoxy and Heterodoxy, May 19th, 2023, in Ancient Faith, the blog. End footnote 7. Okay, next subsection. Versus humanism. By humanism, I do not mean any of the things commonly meant by that word. For example, anthropocentrism, a suspension of belief in or claiming to not know whether God exists, secularism, or the claim that education and philosophical reason is necessary in the spiritual life, as Palamas's opponent Barlaam said. By humanism, I mean the defense of the human image of God, which requires asceticism for the individual to recover that image, and the sacraments, but not in such a way that errs into an ascetic-leaning heresy. What I'm saying is that there is an orthodox variant of humanism found in the arguments of the fathers I cite below in defense, especially Palamas. The humanism under discussion here is the one interested in the question, what is nature in its original state, and what are fallen states of nature? Among the fallen states, what are sinful corruptions, and what are necessary and blameless passions or economic condescensions to our weakness? The Gnostic, Apollinarian, or Monothelite heretics went too far in their attempts at asceticism, mistaking things natural to humanity, the body, the mind, and the will, respectively, as belonging to the latter or lattermost category of fallen nature, corruption, or weakness. And many today seem implicitly to do this without an explicit awareness of their position's logical ties to these heresies. Byzantine humanism, meanwhile, is something of a rhetorical clarion call, which Father Nikolaos Ludovicos outlines in his essay on the Theotokos. Footnote 8. See his Practicing Consubstantiality, the Theotokos and Ever Virgin Mary between Synergy and Sophia in St. Nicholas Kavasilos and Sergius Bulgakov, and in a postmodern perspective, from the journal Analogia 1, number 1, pages 53 to 75, end footnote 8. Subsection Litmus of Marriage or Monasticism. In popular piety and in some Eastern Orthodox theologians, there seems to be the following assumption. Whatever is not clearly shown to persist into the eschaton is something which can be eliminated from Christian earthly life and culture as distractions. They consist of divine condescension to our weakness that we should do away with if we can. The litmus for this idea is how monastic virginity imitates the angels and the eschaton in this life. Marital intercourse is done away with. Thus, the pious conclude, it is the higher path, while marriage is good, blessed, and images the eschaton in other ways, and thus we should go that monastic route as much as possible. Distractions from our ascetic goal warrant neglect or even sometimes hostility. This particular litmus seems borne out by the fathers, who stress the all things considered superior status of virgins over the married because of the all things considered greater difficulty of this path. Footnote 9 on status of virgins over the married. John of Damascus on the Orthodox Faith, page 97. Therefore, just as an angel is superior to a human being, so too is virginity more honorable than marriage. See also Athanasius' Epistle to Ammon, Nicene and Post-Nicene Fathers, Volume 4, I think page 48. Yeah, page 48. Well, it's LTR 48. I forget what LTR means. End footnote 9. The idea is that the future discontinuation of marriage in the physical sense makes its physical aspect expendable here and now, and even if a good, still a lower good. Thus, eschatology provides us ethical orientation here and now. But I am wary of how popular piety applies monasticism or marriage as a litmus to other things like art. This still does not rule out that something special between former spouses continues into the eschaton, and arguably something will be unique about the man-woman relationships formed anew in the eschaton. So, even when applied to marriage, it is the idiomatic forms that the man-woman relationship takes in this age that is expended or discontinuous upon maturation. There is another litmus for contrast. Consider the law of Israel, which was necessary as a tutor for the Israelites or Jews, for as long as it was not fulfilled and transformed by the coming of Christ, the new teacher. One can argue that as the law was for the Jews, so creativity is for all human beings, including Jews, that is temporarily necessary for our lives now, and so a more minimal thesis that could be argued for emerges. This would be that the arts and sciences are necessary for Christian life, our best life here and now. If these creative endeavors are in fact forms of preparation, like tricycles prior to bicycle riding, we should not proudly scorn the tricycle and assume we can graduate immediately to bike riding. We should make maximum use of the tricycle phase gratefully. So it would be temporary. We would graduate, but it's necessary, and so the attitude will be slightly more positive than that of popular piety, as I've discovered it. But the argument of this thesis will go a step further and assert that the creative activity of man is likely always necessary for his or her life in Christ. Or I could say it's always an entailment.